Welcome to the Arise to Live podcast, the podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who are looking for the clarity and perspective to have freedom in both their business and family life. Arise to Live is hosted by Scott Weaver, a professional business coach and consultant who can walk the talk. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hello, and welcome to episode 138 of the Arise to Live podcast. My name is Scott Weaver. Today, we have a special treat, an interview with John Nimmo, author of the international bestseller, Why Wait? A Leader's Perspective on Procrastination. Why we do it, what to do about it. John brings some powerful insights and encouragement for business owners and entrepreneurs. If you want to learn about some of the unwritten rules to be successful at business, this is the interview for you. The show notes has a link to the book and to his contact information. You longtime listeners have already noticed some changes to the podcast. Yes, there's a new podcast logo and a new intro music. It's the same song, the Arise to Live theme song, but now it's been done by a professional musician. The previous intro song was done by my daughter, Tegan, who's pretty good at music herself and who has been on the podcast in the past. And I would say she got some preferential treatment. However, it's time to move up a little bit. As a side note, the musician is her longtime friend, so there's no hard feelings there. There will be more changes to the podcast over the next couple of months. I think it's going to be for the better, but as always, please let me know what you think. In this interview, John and we connect some very real-world things that are rarely heard. In fact, for some of you, this may be the first time you've heard this perspective on how to be successful as a person and as a business owner. The topics include why we procrastinate, getting past failure, leadership, and being a business owner, along with self-forgiveness. And in typical Arise to Live fashion, we have a heavy real-world application that is applicable to where we are today. I will say that John presents one of the best discussions on resentment, revenge, and self-forgiveness that I've heard in a long time. There are a couple things about the recording. The guest, John Nimmo, well, when he gets excited, he snaps his fingers, or claps, or hits his pen on the desk. If you hear that in the background, it's normal. Don't worry about it. The second thing is, it's an admission on my part. John talked about things that just got me thinking so much that I was actually processing what he was talking about through the voice during the interview. Podcast hosts are not supposed to do that. I mean, that's how powerful John's message is. Much of my voice processing has been edited out, but I'm afraid I didn't get it all. So please be patient, or even better, process with your own voice as we go along. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Arise to Live podcast. I am especially excited to bring on a friend. I've known him a couple of years, John Nimmo. He has released and published a book called Why Wait? A Leader's Perspective on Procrastination. And yes, I had a chance to read it. Thank you for the book. It's on Amazon right now. We are going to talk a lot about procrastination. We're going to talk about leadership for small businesses. This is an unscripted interview. We're not exactly where we're end up. I think it's going to really help a lot of people. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. It's so good to be here with you.
All right. So we'll start off with the easy question. What was inside of you to write this book?
Well, I think being in business, I've been guilty for years of procrastinating. I can't believe that's happening. Hang on. For years, being in business, being a salesman, I'm very familiar with procrastinating and substituting in what I call comfort activities for things that substitute for the things that actually take me down the road further in my business success, financially, profitability, all those things, because they're comfortable and they're easy, right? And I think it's the Pareto principle. 20% of our activities get us 80% of our results.
Yeah. Is this along the lines of productivity without results?
I don't know that it's productivity if you're not getting results. It's busyness, but how can you say it's productive if it's not taking you down the road path to success, either financially, emotionally, in your relationships, in your business, in your family, whatever that is for you in the 5 main areas of your life? We think we're productive. But we're not. We're just busy.
Part of this journey that you went through as your own business owner, you ran across some discoveries for yourself, and you've decided to share it in this book, Why Wait? Summarize things.
There are a lot of things, stories in the book about my own experience, physically, my health. And it's amazing looking back on those experiences. Why would I put off solutions that are readily available that I could do right now, but I continually put them off, either out of fear, competing interests, perfectionism, the causes for, what I call kicking the can down the road.
One of the things that really popped out me early on in the book was awareness, and making that connection between being, I think, self-aware and procrastination. Can you expand on that connection a little bit?
I think what I was thinking about as I wrote the book was, and I've never been to an Alcoholic Anonymous meeting, but I've seen them on television, right? And you always see these people sitting in a circle and they introduce themselves. I think before we can really go further toward change in our own self-improvement, self-development, or professional development, we have to raise our awareness level to our strengths and our weaknesses and our kryptonite, so to speak. And that's a hard process. That metacognition, why do I think the way I think, or why do I feel the way I feel? We'll never get beyond where we're stuck at without self-awareness and really taking a hard look in the mirror at our strengths, at our weaknesses, and then how do we go about fixing those things? Awareness is always the first step, right? It's always the first step. And it's so important to our own self-improvement, just like the Alcoholic Anonymous thing. You and I know lots of people that have probably been bankrupt, financially disrupted.
Too many.
Maybe they're drug abusers. But if you don't realize that's who you are, you'll never get beyond that. And I think that first step, I'm an alcoholic, that admittance allows us to build our self-confidence, look for our strengths and weaknesses, and actually get beyond being stuck.
And that stuck part, a lot of people blame the outside environment and never look inside. And that's, I think, your major point. Don't blame, the economy's bad, or I have a bad boss, or.
Yeah. I read an article recently about 50 failed companies. Kodak, Polaroid, Lehman Brothers, Blockbuster, from every sector, technology, Compaq, computers, for example, Gateway. I mean, the list is endless. Do you think every one of those companies was paying attention to their profit margin and their numbers and their bottom line and their costs and their cost of goods sold and all those things? Absolutely, they were, and they failed anyway. Let's take that down the road. Are we really aware of what the parameters are to take us down the road further that are going to launch us into success?
And those parameters are pretty subtle, and you really have to think deep.
Latent. That's the word I like to use. They're not subtle. They are hidden. They're hidden. My own quote in the book is that our own self-conscious, we have to stand guard over our mind because our self-conscious wants to keep us a prisoner of sameness. Every company that ever failed, they were a prisoner of their own sameness. They were locked in. And I think personally, on a personal level, we get locked into sameness to who we think we are. And our environment is dynamic. It's always changing. The business is changing. Our relationships are dynamic. And so I think we have to constantly look in the mirror, say, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And that is a hard conversation, especially, I think, for business executives, entrepreneurs who have a vision of success, and we take off down that road and we go. But we really don't do a self-evaluation, that metacognition about why do I think the way I think?
In the book, you talk quite a bit about the brain and kind of what's going on physically inside the brain. And this gets directly into what we think we are, why thinking in a certain way or not. And then the conflict between, I guess, our, pre-cortex, where it's our consciousness and who we are, versus more of our, I don't know if this is the right word or not, but primitive, and that subconscious that's fighting between the two. In your book, you bring out to prevent procrastination, that inner fight that if we're not aware of, we'll lose. That may not be the best way. In fact, I'll just let you expand on that since you're the author. So.
Well, it really is a battle, because who we are is made up mostly of our past experience. If you think people don't fail, then you are mistaken, right? We've all had failures, and they affect us. They affect the way we approach things. They affect the way we evaluate business risk. They affect the way we think about our faith in ourselves, our confidence level, our identity inside, what we feel like. Notice I use the word feel and not think, right? Because how we feel is in our subconscious mind. It's not our thinking mind. It's not in the prefrontal cortex. That's the logical part, right? But the subconscious is where our identity is held. It's where our self-image is held. It's where our self-esteem is held. It's actually our identity, who we think we are. That impacts our decisions. And it impacts whether or not we take action based on my perception of future failure, the amount of risks. There's a great story, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, the book Cybernetics. For those of you who don't know, Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon. And he reformed this woman's face and made her into a thing of beauty. And she came back months later and complained. And she said, I don't see the difference. And so he pulls out the photographs, the before pictures and the after pictures. And there's a visible difference. You could actually see who she used to be physically and who she is now. And she said, yes, but I don't feel any different. And that's for business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders. And there is a distinction between, we'll talk about that later. We proceed on through our life based on how we feel about ourselves. It's not logical. It's an amazing transformation once you get that. And so this deep-seated feelings, they, in the negative, can actually lead to procrastination, correct? Well, it's the key. You can Google search procrastinate. 14 million searches on Google for procrastination. 14.5% of us admit to procrastinating. Another 27% admit that we do it sometimes. And then 21% do it often. 20.5% do it daily. The result is 87% of people procrastinate in our lives. What is the cost of waiting? And that's the John F. Kennedy, that's the quote that preempted the book. Inaction has a cost and a risk that's far greater often than taking any action. But that inaction, you don't immediately see the cost. So if a business owner was going to invest in, let's say, a new piece of equipment to increase business, that you can calculate. But the cost of not buying the piece of equipment and not increasing. But what you're saying is that procrastination of a business owner not buying a key piece of equipment is actually more costly than actually buying it. Yeah, we tend to think short term because that's what we can see. The future is blind. That's why making a vision statement and coming up with a vision for our company is so difficult, is because it's in the future. It doesn't exist today. The money in your bank account exists today. So you can see the cost of the equipment. You can see the funds in your bank, whether you're going to borrow it, you capitalize it or whatever. It's all concrete. The vision for the future, though, we must create as entrepreneurs. It's out in the future. And we are responsible for that. So great question. Good analogy there.
Well, it gets into the title of your book, Why Wait?
Yeah. So why wait? I guess the classic example of a cost for businesses would be, you have a sub-performing employee. That employee may have been there for a while, right? And so there's a degree of loyalty. But as an owner, leader, CEO, we procrastinate having that conversation, that hard conversation, and we put it off. And yet every day, according to the Gallup polls, Dr. Jim Harder says 85% of employees are disruptive in our workplace. They're not totally engaged in our work. We tolerate it because we don't want to have the hard conversation. And to me, that's a measurable. If we allow that toxicity to exist in our organization, in our companies, there's a cost to that. And sometimes the cost is the procrastination itself, because I lay awake at night, I'm thinking about it, I can't get it off my head, I know I need to take action. I go to the Little League game to watch my son play baseball all weekend, and I've got that thought in my head. So I'm not really present in the moment with my family and with my relationships, because I had this thing that I should have done Friday at work that I didn't do. And now I'm just thinking about, okay, Monday, I've got to have the conversation. It steals our life. And that's the real premise of the book.
And that's a huge cost.
It's a huge cost.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking dollars and cents. We're talking your very life, your livability. Yeah. One thing in the book that really jumped out at me was this failure loop. It's in my own words here, but there's 4 stages. First stage is you accept a project or a goal that you're going to do, and it's out in the future, let's say a year or so. Yeah. It starts out with something you really don't want to do. And then the second stage is there's competing interest. Do I do this boring research, or do I go out, I don't know, for barbecue and then to the game with my friends?
All of us in business have things that we'd rather not do, right? It's part of being a leader, right? I think.
We don't do it. We find other things. There's competing interests. And then, the deadline is 4 weeks away. I better get my act together. So it's this overwhelm. You're working really hard, and then you begin to hate it. Fourth stage is, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this? There's a lot of that. Stage 4 is underperforming. When you hit that overwhelm, that leads to
I hate my job, right? Exactly.
So that jumped out because, I hate to admit it, I've seen it in myself in the past. I see it in my kids. I've seen it in employees. I've seen it in my clients I coach. This is important, and I don't have the words for it. So I'll turn it over to you.
I've been in sales for a lot of my life. I worked with IBM in the 1980s, and rather than make cold calls and sales calls, which is mandated, I have to do it. I'd rather just straighten my desk and do filing, or, I've got this. Let me get organized first. It's kind of like, I need to exercise and lose 30 pounds. I'll order my new shoes. And then when my new tennis shoes get here, I'll start my exercise program. Those are competing interests, right? I think the preemptive thought about that is, well, I will be a different person 3 days from now than I am today. I'll feel differently on Monday, or I'll feel differently when I get my shoes. But I prolong the pain of taking immediate action by doing something I'm comfortable with, right? And that's what a competing interest is. So Great observation.
Yeah, because there's delayed gratification. Let's see if I can get this quote correctly from Tom Landry, head coach of Dallas. The hardest part about coaching, or the key about coaching football players, is to get the player to do what they really, really don't want to do, so that they achieve what they really, really want in life, which is basically the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And I think that's where vision really controls us as business leaders and entrepreneurs. Where there is no vision, we will fail. And the vision itself must be bigger than the present. John F. Kennedy in the space program, for example, it must be bigger. Like I said earlier, it's out in the future. And we have to have the vision for where we're going. And then we must be able to communicate that dream, that vision, to our employees and to our staff, so that they get to buy into something bigger than who they are. And that's the job of a leader. I want to distinguish between what I'll call business executives and leaders. They aren't the same thing. CEOs, CFOs, you can hold the title. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're a leader. As leaders, quote unquote, we have a responsibility to replace ourselves. And that's the definition to me of what and who a leader is. It's how do I replicate me in terms of people taking ownership, people being accountable, people being responsible, actually doing their job, not because they have to, but because they desire to, they want to, right? I've got some great applicable examples of that have happened in my own business. I had an administrative assistant. One day I was leaving early in the morning, driving through town. I drove by the office, and here's my administrative assistant sitting in the office, and it's 4:30 a.m. in the morning.
4:30?
Yeah. Later in the day, I called her. I go, "You were in the office at 4:30 today. What is going on?" She goes, I had to get in and get these things done because that was the time that I had to get it done today. To me, it wasn't because she was mandated to be there. It was because she wanted to get up and get there and get that done. And that's the test of real leadership, getting buy-in and having your staff take ownership. So good point. Sorry if I preached too long on that point. It just excites me.
It's good because as business owners and a business leader, they're overlapped in a lot of areas. And I think sometimes the day-to-day grind, a lot of business owners forget about the leadership part of their role. And then part of the leadership role is to prevent procrastination, whether it's among themselves or from their employees or in the company itself. I mean, this is why I like the book. It's a reminder. It's like you can influence yourself so that you can influence and improve your life and others' lives.
Thank you. There's a great tool for me when I feel that I'm procrastinating or putting something off. I write down what I'm doing to subvert that activity.
Is it what you're thinking at the time, or is it actual activities? I don't know, cleaning the sock drawer right now instead of doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. That kind of thing, right? So, doing social media, we see that. Oh my gosh. I think the cell phone and social media is the biggest disruptor to business. I read somewhere where we scroll about a mile a day on social media.
A mile.
5,280 feet scrolling
with
on your
finger.
Phone every day. Now, how much time does that take, right? How much loss of productivity is that? The vastness of the technology is designed to make us more productive. It's actually pulling us back because I'd rather be on Facebook chucking with my friends than doing this task that I really need to be doing, right?
And we're back to, are we going to take immediate pleasure and gratification, or are we going to go for the long-term satisfaction?
Yeah. Well, I love to use diet and health for that. It's that Snickers bar in the in the checkout line.
Yes.
It's sitting there and it's calling my name. Is that Snicker bar more valuable to me than my goal? That's what I'm really saying. That Snicker bar is going to serve me well rather than being the real person I want to be. And that's not true. It's a lie. So there really are two people sitting on your shoulder, the good guy and the bad guy, the two angels sitting there. There's more truth to that than what you might think.
So, yeah. And it gets back into one of your key points is being aware of things. If you weren't aware of the candy bar speaking your name, you just grabbed it, then your goal is out. So I guess as an encouragement, the fact that you recognize candy bar, the temptation, means that you are actually aware and you can make an intentional decision.
Yeah. If you study anything about habits, your subconscious kind of takes over because you anticipate the flavor of the chocolate way before you ever unwrap the bar. And that's the battle between, logically, I know I should do this, but my subconscious is leading me somewhere else. Hard stuff.
You talk the brain. There's so some of it is, I would just say physically, your body kind of trying to take over because it tastes good and you get a sugar rush.
You know what's amazing? So, I'm aware. I try to be increasingly aware, and I measure a lot. And so several months ago, 3:00 in the afternoon, I always get this kind of I have to have coffee or something. I'm like, oh, Dairy Queen's open. I'm going to run and get a milkshake. So I went and got a chocolate milkshake at Dairy Queen. So the next day at 3:00, I'm getting hungry and I'm going, oh man, that milkshake was so good. I'll just run down and get another one, right? You just established a craving in your body now. And it's amazing. The next day at 3:00, you know what I'm craving? Oh, my body kicks and goes, oh, it's time for a milkshake. It's time for that milkshake. And all of a sudden I'm fighting that craving because I gave into it for a couple of days in a row. Our bodies and the way we think in our subconscious, it's amazing. We got to teach the good habits as well as the bad, right? We can implant those things, the good things, as well as the bad things, but we just don't think about it in the same way.
No. Okay. That just brought up a crazy question for you. Can you procrastinate procrastination? So let's say, go back to your milkshake example. Yeah. So you got this craving, it's 3:00. It's like Dairy Queen's right across. It's going to taste so good. What if you procrastinate that? Procrastinate the procrastination of getting.
My example of that, I am an avid reader. I love learning, and I don't just read a book. I devour a book. Like I destroy it. I write notes in the margins, underline, highlight. By the time I'm done, I've read it 3-4 times. I anecdote it to death, so to speak. And so we all know that that's a good thing. Learning from reading, you need to be well read if you're going to be an entrepreneur and a business leader. But I can substitute that in and feel like I'm being productive and procrastinate things that I really should be doing because I enjoy it so much. It becomes part of my 80% that I shouldn't be doing, procrastinating the procrastination. So I guess the whole message is fight your subconscious. I use the iceberg in the book as an example. Your subconscious is below the surface, and everything that we think in our consciousness is above the surface, and it's smaller. But the subconscious is really in control. It's by design to control your breathing, your heart rate, all your bodily function. And so it thinks, that milkshake at 3:00 in the afternoon, that's a good thing. We've established it. And I'm going to carry that on. And we're by design that way. So great thought.
That the 4-step thing that we talked earlier about, breaking this failure loop. Well, I'm going to connect a bunch of dots and then get into the second part of your book. I'm not going to try to spoil anything for your readers out there, but you need to find out for yourself. Okay. We have the failure loop, in which we talked about before. We talked a lot about the subconscious. We talked about how your feelings and where it comes from. So to break that loop that leads to procrastination, you start out with forgiving yourself, giving yourself grace. That surprised me. Can you go a little deeper?
Well, if you've ever failed in your life, when I look back, it's amazing I'm still alive today. So failed at marriage. I was homeless in 1986 after working with IBM. I became a homeless for a while. I failed out of college early on. I was a D student in high school. And so all of those failures build up, and you harbor resentment in your heart and in your subconscious for all of your past. And resentment leads itself to restriction. You become restricted in how you think, the actions you take, how you evaluate the risks in your business based on your past failures. The point of that chapter is self-forgiveness. It's not about forgiving others so much, but you have to look in the mirror and go, okay, I've got to let go. Because resentment is, by design, is any negative thought or emotion against any idea, thought, place, thing, entity, or idea. And if you are harboring resentment against one of your employees, against a team leader, against your spouse, you don't think that you can be restricted in one area of your life and not feel that restriction in every area of your life. The chapter on forgiveness is about letting go of the past and coming to terms with who you are. That deep-seated metacognition thought. It's like, look, everybody fails. John Maxwell even says sometimes we fail, sometimes we learn. If you think you're the only person that's ever failed, carry that weight with us. Because if I'd have been a different person, I wouldn't have failed. I wouldn't have done that, right? And it could be a failed marriage. It can be a failed parenting issue. It could be failure with an employee, failure at a business, a bankruptcy. The real key is, are you going to go on and forgive yourself and go to the next level and learn from those mistakes? We're entrepreneurs in nature. We have bright light syndrome. We start down a path and we pursue a business. We perhaps fail or give up. That sticks with us as resentment against ourselves. That represents friction. It's a restriction of freedom to go on to the next bigger thing. So self-forgiveness, forgive yourself, let it go, and get a coach or a mentor or a trusted advisor who can see that in you and then hold you accountable for future results that's better. Get beyond your failure. And the only way I know to do that is go through an exercise of self-forgiveness.
What you said was really good. It's got me thinking. So maybe I'll just summarize this. Probably this will be an understatement, but sometimes the best way to go forward is to forgive yourself of the past, the chains around your ankles or in your life. And so forgiveness is that letting go so you can move faster forward into a better future. I work with a lot of tech companies, and I say, hey, business is a very emotional endeavor and you can't ignore it. And maybe that's why I really liked your book, because it really brings out the emotional side that you have to deal with it. You have to deal with the procrastination. You have to deal with your past failures and not resent yourself for failing, saying, oh, if I only was, taller, smarter, richer, whatever.
Yeah.
And engage in these, almost spiritual disciplines of forgiveness and grace and taking care of others and taking care of yourself. This is a quality and something that's important to be successful in life, however you define success is.
I agree.
Hopefully I'm not rambling too much.
No, it's absolutely a necessity. Abraham Lincoln is a great example of that, right? He failed so many times before he became president of the United States. That's the only off the cuff example I can think of right now. But it never kept him from pursuing his vision and his goal of being a success. And I think very often we look at those failures as mountains instead of when they're really just molehills. Let's not play the blame game. It really doesn't matter whose fault it was. It was a failure, right? Let's carry on. Let's not hold resentment, because resentment, it comes to fruition in the form of revenge. At work, how many times have somebody at work done something to you, stabbed you in the back, gossiped about you, and then you hear about it third party, and now all you can think about is getting revenge. How can I get, for pity's sake, getting revenge is about getting even, right? Who wants to get even in life? I don't want to get even. Let's get ahead.
Yes.
Right. And if you want to get ahead, you gotta let some stuff go.
Yep.
You can't carry that baggage and get ahead. We don't want to get even. We don't want to be average. Let's let it go. Let's get ahead.
Yeah, I think it's Zig Ziglar said that failure is an event, not a person.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Well, yeah, this is powerful to really bring out what I call as real world things and not pretend or sweep them under the rug.
Scott, people think they want to go into business and it's all flowers. And I want to say to you, being a leader, a true leader, that means you're the person having the hard conversations. You're the person carrying the heavy end of the piano. Imagine, moving a grand piano. There's a light end and a heavy end. And as a leader, you better be carrying the heavy end. That's what leaders do. And so often what I see is executives, business owners who want to take the light end. They don't want to engage in the heavy stuff. We just want the reward financially. We want the applause. We want the accolades for creating a successful business or whatever, but we don't really want to carry the heavy end. And I think that disengages our teams and our employees and our staff so many times because we expect them to carry the heavy end.
Yeah, big time. One of my top download episodes is called You Are a Problem Solver. This is like, you're a business owner, you solve problems. That's what you do.
That's what you do.
And a lot of times you have to solve problems inside of yourself. And that gets into the why, wait, and prevent procrastination. So.
And you know what? With practice, we get better.
Yes.
Think about a hard conversation with a client or a customer that needs to happen, right? And you have that conversation and it comes up, and let's say it's successful. All of a sudden that propels you into the next hard conversation and the next one. And with practice, all of a sudden now I look forward to those hard conversations because I know I have the confidence that I can handle it and it's going to present an opportunity down the road somewhere. It's really good. Practice.
Yes.
Practice.
Let's see, wrapping up this interview, is there any high points of the book or things that we didn't cover that you really want to bring out?
Yeah, I would just say one thing. The book is filled with some quotes and some helpful hints and tips on dealing with procrastination. One of the things is that isolation is your enemy, is that very often as a business executive or leader, I find in my coaching experience when I'm talking to others, they feel alone. And they don't feel that they can really share the things that are holding them back. It seems to be confidential. It seems that they're going to be less of a person if I'm vulnerable. Get a mentor, get a coach, get in a mastermind group, get a trusted advisor that you can really, really be vulnerable with, because very often we can't see the label of the jar that we're in. That's the value, Scott. I mean, you can see things in me that I can't see in myself. Michael Jordan always had a coach because they can see things in him that he can't see in himself. Michael Phelps, he has a coach. Every professional athlete, every singer has a vocal coach. Why? Because they can see things in you that you can't see. And for your listeners out there today, if you're in business and you don't have that person, you need someone to be able to see the things in you that you can't see in yourself because you're too close. Your procrastinating behavior, all of those kind of things that are invisible to you, someone else will be able to point out and then take action on it.
How can people get your book? How can they contact you?
Yeah, I have a website called leadershiplived.com. All one word, leadershiplived.com. John Nimmo, all my contact information is there. The book is called Why Wait? It's a international #1 bestseller now. It's on Amazon. Yay, yeah, unsuspected to me. And the book is called Why Wait? A Leader's Perspective on Procrastination, Why We Do It, and What to Do About It. I have an author's page on Amazon. You can find me there as well. But I encourage you, plug into my website. We're building a website for the book that will be ongoing in terms of support, helping people get beyond their procrastinating habit. And I know you procrastinate because 87% of us do it at some time or another. No, thank you for having me, Scott.
Thank you.
I care a lot about you. We've become friends, and I really appreciate your efforts and just bringing value to people. And really, that's what it's all about, right? Articulating that value in a great way and bringing value to people. And it's just super to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed this. We'll have to have you back.
Please do. Thank you.